Hi there. I want to talk about 4 basic types of German helmet used by the armed forces between 1933 and 1945. When the Nazis came to power, the German army was very restricted because of the armistice agreements in 1918. But what they were still using was the model 1918 helmet. Here I have a very good example of one such helmet that was still being used by the German army. It still has all the characteristics of the traditional First World War German army helmet. And this is what they were using. However, when the Nazis came into power, they started to apply the armed forces decals, and in 1931 they developed a new liner. Here is a perfect example of the new liner. These were made with an aluminium liner band and attached with 3 pins to the helmet shell with washers. The washers were not used during the First World War, but because of the fragile nature of the liner pins, it was deemed probably that to add a washer made it stronger. In 1935, a new design of helmet came out. This is much more streamlined, better designed, a very good, solid, robust helmet. In fact, it was so well designed, I think they were quite expensive to manufacture. This helmet was designed with a separate rivet for the ventilation hole. It also sported both emblems, this denoting the army, the national eagle. This one is the national colour. The liner, again, a model 31. These helmets were manufactured in the peacetime and I think tended to be quite expensive to produce. So once the war started, the Germans decided that they needed to produce more at less cost. And also, they started to remove the tricolour, the national colour, from the helmets. In fact, soldiers were actually asked to actually scrape them off the helmets. 1940, a new helmet was designed. It's basically the same helmet, only difference being the ventilation holes were pressed out of the steel rather than a separate rivet been inserted. This example from my collection is of a Luftwaffe helmet, the German Air Force. The shape is the same, but if you notice, there is no longer a tricolour on it. I think this was to do with the fact that the tricolour was being used as a target for shooters, snipers for example. It retains the same basic liner, Model 31. The difference being that the aluminium liner band is now replaced with a steel liner band. The aluminium liner band was probably more expensive to produce, but was not as strong as the steel liner band. As the war progressed, helmets needed to be manufactured faster, and they came with a new design, which was the Model 42. And that basically is still the same helmet, but it no longer has a rolled-in rim. They are stamped out of one piece of metal without the actual processing of rolling the rim in afterwards. That was time-consuming and more expensive. But the helmet retained its basic shape. The liner, again, is the Model 31. It's still the same basic helmet, only a variation of it. By this time, decals were being phased out. This camouflage version from my collection was used in Southern Europe. I in fact found this in Italy. It was probably produced for the Afrika Korps, hand painted by a soldier himself. But from this point on, mostly these Model 42 helmets didn't retain the decals anymore. And many examples exist of the Model 40 without decals and the Model 42 without decals. And this is, I think, one of the prides of my collection. It's a beautiful helmet. I found this in Italy, as I said, in 1984, near Siena. If you look closely here, you can see the Model 31 liner with the aluminium band. I guess it's not easy to see, but there it is. The Model 35, this one has a steel band, which means that it probably was relined during the early years of the war. During the beginning of the war, when the Germans were advancing, they often recovered a lot of their equipment from the fields that was left behind and refurbished it. This is a good example of that. It has the 1940 steel band in it, even though the helmet itself is actually dated 1938. So it should have an aluminium liner band. But this is originally done during the war. This is a standard Model 40 with a steel liner band. This was the norm for helmets produced from 1940 onwards. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. I know it is only the 4 basic types of German helmet used by the armed forces during the Second World War. There are, of course, many others for the paratroopers, the police, the air raid wardens. The list goes on. These are the standard basic versions. If you've enjoyed watching this, we hope to be making some more videos soon. And you can always visit us on our website, which is www.captainjacksmilitaria.com. And please subscribe to our YouTube account. Thank you.